John Jones of Mars, Katmatui of Gorgar, Ronnie Raymond of Earth, Al Pratt of Earth, Jenny Lynn Naden, Arthur Curry, Carter Hall, Kendra Saunders, Ted Gord, Arani Desai, Paco Ramon, Hank Haywood, David Knight, Erwin Bowen, Wesley Dodds, Charles McNider, Terry Sloan, Tara Markov.
"10 years ago, a crashing wave of light erupted across the DC universe. A multicolored spectrum of energy bathed the cosmos in a war of light. Rage clashed against passion. Hope sought to stifle fear. Greed to choke out compassion. And in the middle of it all, the will to keep going and fight for all. Now this war has come to the surface of our planet, because while the light fights, the darkness rises." Hero, villain, friend, foe, family. Across the universe, the dead have risen, and it's going to take every available podcaster to fight back. In 2016, we covered the dawn of the Justice League with Justice League Year 1. In 2017, we soaked in the seminal Justice. Last year, we threw it back to the Silver Age. But this year's JLMay podcast event covers an event that knows not the boundaries of death itself. JLMay covers Blackest Night in celebration of the event's 10-year anniversary. Our coverage begins on April 30th with the podcast of Oa and proceeds through the entire month of May with Chris and Reggie's Cosmic Treadmill, the Idlehead of Diablo, the Fire and Water podcast, Head Speaks, Coffee and Comics podcast, Longbox Crusade, Waiting for Doom, Task Force X, the Starman Manhunter Adventure Hour, the Dr. DC podcast, the Birds of Prey podcast, Justice's First Dawn, and ends with the LanternCast. So join us this May, because across the DC universe, the dead have risen. Where will you be?
In brightest day, in blackest night, all other podcasts tremble in fright. Losers cower before the power. Oranges lust and blues you can trust. Indigos feel and white ones heal. Yellows scare and green ones dare. That sapphire love and black hands glove will rock your foundation without hesitation. Chad and Mars face evil's might. Respect their power, for they'll make you see the
Hi everybody, I'm Chad Bokelman.
I'm Mark Marble.
And this is the LanternCast.
Episode 363.
That's right. What are we talking about tonight? I keep forgetting.
War of the Green Lanterns?
Is that yeah, is it the Krona bullshit? It's always Krona.
Yeah, it is.
I don't think I want to talk about Krona.
Doomsday Clock? This is our spoiler-filled guessing how the last two issues of Doomsday Clock will end when they come out in 2021. No,
yeah, I don't have time to guess what's going to happen in several years.
So issue 10 did technically come out today, so there's a chance it might actually finish in 2019.
True. No, it is JL freaking May. I don't think that's a part of the hashtag. Sorry for people.
It can be a second hashtag.
So yeah, it is JLMay, and we are wrapping this bad boy up. If you have not listened to the multitude of other podcasts covering JLMay and doing the 10th anniversary of Blackest freaking Night, then you have missed out, my friend, because we're covering issues 7 and 8 of Blackest Night, as well as Green Lantern 52, which is the end of the event. So if you're jumping in here, you have gotten sorely lost, and you need to hightail it back on over to the podcast of OA. Listen to Blackest Night 0 and Green Lantern 43 be covered by Myron and Phil over there. Then follow that up with Chris and Reggie's Cosmic Treadmill. Then the Idlehead of Diablo. Then Fire and Water Podcast. Head Speaks. Coffee and Comics. Longbox Crusade. Then maybe come back here. But there's also like a bunch of other tie-in stuff that's been covered over on like Task Force X and Coffee and Comics and the Starman Manhunter Adventure Hour and the Dr. DC Podcast and the Birds of Prey Podcast that you may want to stick around and just listen to some of their coverage too. And by the way, as we record this, some of the other stuff hasn't yet come out, but will between the time I say these words and the time you hear them. So Waiting for Doom covered the Doom Patrol issues. Justice's First Dawn covered the Justice League issues. The Bat Pod is covering the Blackest Night Batman miniseries. The Absolute DC Podcast is covering the Blackest Night Flash miniseries. And Michael Bailey, Fortress of Bailey 2 and all that good stuff, he helped us talk about Emerald Dawn 1 way back when. He's over on It All Comes Back to Superman. He's covering Blackest Night Superman 1 through 3, the miniseries. So, even as I say these words, between the time I say them and the time you hear them, hopefully on the day it releases, there's still a bunch of other stuff that just hit that you still need to listen to. Now, presumably, if you're already a listener of the LanternCast, you know about Blackest Night. We're not going to give you the full event recap because I just gave you where to find the various pieces to figure out what the heck has been happening. But before we get into our stuff, we figured we should talk a little bit about maybe our memories of the event and kind of what, how we were experiencing it, where we were sort of at in the comics world when this was coming out, and sort of how we reacted to it as it hit. Mark, I mean, I know you've been reading since Emerald Twilight, that sort of era. Well, I know you weren't part of the LanternCast yet. What were you thinking of Blackest Night? I mean,
the March to Blackest Night?
Yeah, the March to Blackest Night, I would say, because I feel like if you were a Green Lantern fan like we were, where we were picking up like Green Lantern and Green Lantern Corps and then all this other stuff that was coming out around there, basically the time Green Lantern 26 until Blackest Night, essentially.
Now, to me, I look at this. It all falls into the same, I guess, prism to view things through. And we still haven't done a Jeff Johns retrospective, actually, because this just reminded me of this. Because in a way, Blackest Night this period is kind of like Jeff Johns at his peak, regardless of whether you're someone who liked his stories or not in this era. The peak of Jeff Johns, as far as the success and overall the way people were taking to his stories and the impact that they had, pretty much from Sinestro Corps War through the end of Blackest Night. That was like the golden age of Jeff Johns. And arguably it was the golden age from a popularity perspective of Green Lantern, certainly in the modern era. I don't think there's much, and based on merchandising, Q factor, pop culture overall influence, I think that absolutely was. So I have fond memories of that period just because of that. But the way Sinestro Corps War ended with that preview of Blackest Night, which we, but they gave you the bare bones about what was going to happen in Blackest Night. Obviously, you knew it had something to do with what was left of the Anti-Monitor being trapped, and the whole thing in 2009, the dead shall rise, the dead will rise. That the build up to Blackest Night, I am very, very fond of. I have fond memories of. I remember everything from, and obviously because you have strong ties to it too because of the Rage of the Red Lanterns, but everything from post Sinestro Corps War, Rage of the Red Lanterns, introducing the Red Lanterns and the Blue Lanterns, Lorfleas, in the Agent Orange storyline, everything, and of course, even before this hit, this became such a full DC event, which Sinestro Corps War really wasn't, but it became so popular, and obviously there were other characters other than Green Lantern and the Green Lantern Corps in it, that it did it kind of started, the way it wrapped up, it kind of reached out and affected so many more characters and was a bigger story. I think that just the idea how big this event was, and the interest in it, and the introduction of all the different corps, and what the Black Lantern Corps was going to be, and of course the San Diego Comic-Con. I think when I think of build up to Blackest Night, I think of the San Diego Comic-Con, those 5 figures that were available, that set, which I was lucky enough to get in a great buy it now, make your best offer, I should say. It was a make your best offer, and luckily they accepted. So yeah, so I have very fond memories, and it was every time previews came out, it was new merchandise. We just waited to see what new Green Lantern, whether it was the first wave of T-shirts that came out, which were still probably the best related to the multi-color core and the Spectrum, the Legends of the DCU, the Blackest Night, the Legends of the DCU bus line, or whatever it is, which I have a bunch of. I just think that was, so when I think of Blackest Night, even more than the events in the story, I think of what it meant for Green Lantern personally, and I think of just how that whole pretty much that 2-year period and 4-year period, if you go back to 4 to 5 year period, if you go back from the beginning of Green Lantern Rebirth through Blackest Night, that pretty much, unfortunately, though there have been good stories since, that even once we headed into the Brightest Day era, it Green Lantern kind of had already peaked and was on its way down again.
Yeah, and you mentioned it earlier. I started reading comics, after picking up 2 random trades at a bookstore. I went to a local comic shop and picked up the first issue Green Lantern related I could find that was currently on the stands. And it was the Final Crisis Rage of the Red Lanterns one-shot special. So the march to Blackest Night, quite literally, was my entry point into comics as a regular reader. That is, I believe, the issue right after Secret Origin, which is a weird time for a comics fan, I guess, to get in. It would have been better maybe to get in with the beginning of the Secret Origin story arc that took place between Rage of the Red Lanterns and the Sinestro Corps War, but whatever. So the march to that, man, the sheer thirst I had for trying to figure out and understand everything, right, as all this other stuff was also being revealed for the first time, was just like, I felt like I was getting in on the ground floor and that I was like super behind at the same time. And discovering the LanternCast and, all of that, really helped me keep up. I found a community I could listen to and enjoy and follow along with, ask questions as I had them. And you had Rage of the Red Lanterns, and you had the Agent Orange 4-issue story arc, and you had Green Lantern Corps had that Sons of the Star Sapphires story arc that was also really good. Just everything was just hitting on all cylinders. And when Blackest Night hit, the free comic book day issue was Blackest Night number 0. And I remember that being a big deal for me at the time, because not only was that my first free comic book day, it was also, it's rare on free comic book day to get something wholly original. And a lot of times it's going to be your standard anthology series or double-sided reprints or, maybe a sneak peek of something coming down the line, but also maybe like 4 pages of that, and then the rest of it reprints of something else. Like this was a full, almost a full issue. Blackest Night #0 was almost a full issue that kicked off this event that we'd been waiting for. And that, even though I was new to the comics world, that felt pretty unique. And this is, I mean, I had decided to just go whole hog with this thing, man. Like I don't still have them all, but I have a good amount of them. At the time, several years ago, I had every single issue, a copy of every single floppy, every tie-in, every resurrected tile, every miniseries, every issue of this series, and I still have a lot of it. I still have obviously all the Green Lantern, all the Green Lantern Corps, all the Blackest Night, most of the other things, but missing a few things here and there. But man, another thing I kind of wanted to pivot to is JLMay has always been about the Justice League. And I think some people might have skipped JLMay this year because this is more of a Green Lantern story than a Justice League story or a DC Universe story. And I'd argue against that.
Well, it's definitely a DC Universe story.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's absolutely mired in Green Lantern lore and the stuff that had been building up in the Green Lantern series. So you can't escape either of those statements. But at the same time, I find it like you're going to be hard pressed to find events from the modern era that aren't mired in one character or another. A lot of them are going to be, maybe it involves the DCU or involves the Justice League, but it's going to be Batman heavy or Superman heavy or whatever. As a good example, and I know they're the competition, but look right now what's happening at Marvel. The big event right now is War of the Realms. Right from the title, who do you think that's most mired in? It's a Thor and Asgard themed arc. It involves the Marvel Universe and crosses over into a bunch of other Marvel titles, but it is a Thor-heavy, Thor-centric book. So, I mean, it's sort of the now. Granted, JLMay has only been going for 4 years now, so I say only 4 years. After helping arrange this, it's a miracle how long it's been going, because you try wrangling a bunch of podcasts. But that being said, we may not have covered every crossover that ever has happened, but it was such a good timing. Such good timing. We aligned up perfectly with the 10th anniversary of Blackest Night. You and I did say we wanted to do something for the 10th anniversary of Blackest Night, and it just so happens, what happens in the first Saturday of May? Free Comic Book Day. What started with a Free Comic Book Day issue? Blackest Night. And 10 years, I mean, it marks the 10-year anniversary, so it was absolutely perfect. So I had to say, all right, why do make a big deal out of JLMay at the exact same time we'd be making a big deal out of Blackest Night? Let's just make it one and the same and bring in everybody to have as much fun as possible. But in addition to that, I kind of got sidetracked from my point. It's such a DC Universe story. I know it's Lantern heavy. You just look at every cover and you see rings. I get it. I understand it. But if you go, I mean, outside of the Lanterns, and by Lanterns I just mean the Lanterns you already know, not the ones that get deputized later. You have Mara, and you have the Atom, and you have Flash. There's such huge story arcs happening with those guys in these arcs. The inclusion and the link that Batman has to everybody in the universe, in the DC universe that is mentioned in this story, how that connection is used against them, and Batman in quotes. The stuff that happens between the super families are probably some of the more interesting stuff that happens in this title. Some of my favorite things that happen during Blackest Night occur during maybe the Superman miniseries, where Kal-El of Earth 2 comes back and fights against Superman and Connor, and there's that whole stuff that thing that happens with with Psycho Pirate in those issues, and then the Adventure Comics issues where you follow Superboy Prime on his Earth and the stuff that he goes through. I mean, there's the Black Lantern Lois Lane. I mean, I know those are just tie-ins, but there's a reason they're focused on the Wonder Woman. My God, how many different times did we mention the sheer beauty of the art in the Wonder Woman miniseries after the coverage of Blackest Night ended? I mean, if you point to beautiful art, you just look at the cover to Blackest Night Wonder Woman #3, the painted cover of her as a Star Sapphire. I mean, and that may be just art, but there's so much DC in this thing. And there's so much focus put on these characters outside of the main Lanterns, but like I said, with Mara and the Atom and Flash, that it's just I don't see how it's not a great Justice League sort of story. Sure, it's Lantern heavy, but I'm rambling. I'll let you sort of pick up the ball and run with it here and maybe kind of flesh out the point a little bit. But I really get the feeling it's such a strong DC story, such a strong Justice League presence here.
I agree. I think there is. I mean, when you and it actually was, and and again, it shows you the importance or the presence Jeff Johns had at that time, and also what they felt they had going with Green Lantern to begin with, to do an event which was at its core, no pun intended, was revolving around Green Lantern centric ideas, but to do a whole major event in which, yes, it absolutely reached out and covered all the areas of the DCU, but still it was being based on, key Green Lantern themes and elements were driving the story forward. The fact that they decided to do that come on, we've seen countless different events, or that even if the core focus wasn't on just Superman or Batman, but we knew that at the end of the day, that's what people tended to remember. That is always there were the moments involving those heroes, like Final Crisis and things like that, or even Infinite Crisis. Too, even though that did have some cool Green Lantern moments as well, but Jeff wrote it, so that would make sense. But I think one of the things I liked about Blackest Night was because so many events had miniseries that really mean nothing at all. I don't necessarily mean that they mean nothing as far that they're not just that they mean nothing to the main story, that like you lose nothing if you just follow the main story, if you don't read any of the minis. But even as far as the characters or the fallout with the characters in these minis, the stars of them, that you don't get in, you feel there's nothing that happens in them, even if you're reading them, that there's nothing of relevance to it. It's like, But I think because of the nature of Blackest Night, while yes, there were a gazillion tie-ins, and I know I do not have them all, but I did have the Superman. I think I had Wonder Woman. I think there were a bunch that I did have. That the way the Black Rings worked, and the way they were, that everybody who was quote unquote resurrected had all the memories of what the real person, the real characters had. I think that added an element to it. There was something personal to it, and you saw the impact. Just like even like you kind of mentioned and that obviously pops up a little bit more towards the end of Blackest Night. The idea of using the tethering, the connection to Bruce Wayne, or Bruce Wayne in quotes, that using that as such a strong tether, and how that connects to everybody in the DCU. I can understand. I mean, everybody has their interests, so I can understand if some people did not, either were not reading Green Lantern at the time, or didn't really, or the theme or the concepts that were being laid out in this book that were related to Green Lantern core ideas.
Very dark and very bleak is a big detractor a lot of people will put towards this series. It's just so dark. It's so bleak.
But true. though it was clearly designed that way, because especially if you go back,
Right.
I was looking at the Blackest Night director's cut when I was pulling these books for us when we were going to do these. That I went back and looked at that, and basically that issue has the entire, I think, script for Blackest Night wanted it, including some things that didn't make it in and sketchbooks and everything. But that's the way I think Jeff began the description on in his script, that this is a horror story. So feel free to make it as dark and show as much as you feel comfortable with, but also if need be, use the shadows to hide anything that's like really, really bad or something you think is pushing the envelope. Those were his instructions when he was writing the script. So I think that this. Well, yes, I can understand some criticism, and it is. Personally, I think it's a little nitpicky to think that, oh my God, there's an event focused around somebody other than Superman and Batman. It's absolutely a DCU story, and it was set up to have impact clearly all throughout the DCU, not just Earth, not just Green Lantern characters, not just the main, the big three or the big four. Since Hal was borderline, we've talked about this before. That Hal was probably more closer to being in the Trinity at this point than ever before, and this based on stories that were being told with this character. But considering how much Hawkman and Atom and Manhunter and all these characters and even some of the relatively not obscure in the cosmic scheme of things, but just obscure based on where they were at the time in DCU, like bringing back like when we saw like Black Lantern with Jean-Paul Valley, Azrael.
Black Lantern and Airwave.
Yes, there were some really, really cool obscure lanterns. I mean, Black Lanterns that were brought back, and I think that so you could tell that besides that it took some creativity, like, they had fun with it, and they embraced what this was, and yeah, I like Blackest Night. I'm not going to lie. I think and I've said this before, and when we've talked about this on the show at different points, probably a long time ago now, that I kind of think Blackest Night kind of peaked in the middle. I don't think it, even though there were some cool things, obviously we're going to be talking about in this episode, that cool moments that happened towards the tail end of this event. But I think as far as the story goes, the overall story goes, I think it may have peaked in the middle. I think personally they had the Necron revealed too early. I think
it was also spoiled.
Yeah, it was spoiled. It was spoiled, but that was their own choice too. I mean, they could have had a different cover. I know why you wanted that.
I mean, yeah, that's true. But they also, I mean, it wasn't just spoiled on a solicit. It was also spoiled on like one of maybe like the checklist cards that you saw at your local comic shop. Like,
oh yeah, you're right. I think I remember that now. But again, that falls on them too. But yes, overall, it seemed like there too much to me. If I'm critiquing it. It seemed like there was a lot of stuff building up to what was going on to the power. So I think the power battery got full too quick. And think about how much of the story took place after. Even even in Green Lantern, even in Blackest Night proper in the miniseries or the Maxi series, how many issues took place after the Black Lantern central power battery got transferred and transported to Coast City, and how many more issues took place after that happened. So maybe it was my anticipation of the event and hoping it was going to be even more than it was. So maybe it was unrealistic expectations. But I always have thought that Blackest Night kind of peaked maybe before it ended. So, but it was. Yeah. But I have very fond memories of the story.
There are two things I'll point to as this being a proof positive. This is a DC Universe or a DC Universe Celebration story. The Black Lanterns themselves is number one, because you mentioned it earlier. If their entire job is to get a rise out of you, how do they do that? By exposition. I mean, I know it's stupid or whatever, but let's say, okay, why? Why do you resurrect Jean Loring and put her in her Eclipso outfit? To fuck with the Atom. Why does that mess with the Atom? Because there's a story there. And that ties into the second reason I think this is a DC Universe story. We had the miniseries. Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, JSA, all that stuff. We had the tie-ins for series that were currently ongoing at the time with Booster Gold and Justice League of America and was it The Outsiders, or did they just have the one issue? But Rebels, all that stuff. That made sense. But why the resurrected titles if you didn't want to tell stories of the DCU? Why resurrect Catwoman or the Power of Shazam or The Question or Starman or Weird Western Tales?
They were all was that all 1 month when they came out?
I believe so, but
I thought so too. Yeah.
What's more of a shout out to classic DC than a resurrection of a title called The Atom and Hawkman? I mean, you can't get any closer unless you were to say we're going to resurrect Showcase Presents. like this, the resurrected titles were very clearly, we can do more with this. And it makes so much more sense to explore the universe. And okay, well, what happens to Catwoman? What's happening to Starman and The Question? And what's happening to the Weird Western stuff? And why bother telling those stories at all when you already had the minis and the tie-ins to the existing series? Why do the resurrected titles? Those are celebrations of the DC lore. But we've been rambling for a while. We should probably cover the actual stuff we were meant to cover. We told you we're not going to give you a recap of what's been happening so far, but there's a little bit of stuff we do want to get into before we cover Blackest Night number 7. So, Mark, do you want to tell people what we're going to talk about a bit before we start leaping into Blackest Night 7 proper?
Sure. When we were talking about what issues we wanted to cover, it seems like forever. Forever now, when you and I sat down and we're coming up with the blueprint for this, and very good job as always executing and following through on the organizational aspect of this, Chad. I mean, we sat down and planned it out, but you were the conductor, so pat yourself on the back, Chad.
The conductor is nothing without the music sheets in front of him.
It's nothing without the peons that play the music. Oh, what am I saying now? So when we decided to which issues we were going to cover, for me anyway, I have really fond memories of Green Lantern 50 and 51, not just because of what some of the mostly I would say because of the moments in them, but because of how they tie into Green Lantern history. So while we don't want to spend too much time on it because we're covering the main event, there are some things worth noting in this that do have at least a small factor in going forward into the end of Blackest Night, and that's the 3 main issues we're going to cover. So I'm basically just gonna go through these really quickly. So at this point, we have the deputy lanterns are already there, and we're pretty much we're at Coast City, which I had just mentioned, so much of the end of the storyline takes place at Coast City, and the major conflict here in this issue, besides the joy of seeing the deputy lanterns all go crazy with power in different ways, that everybody in their own way embracing what their power is. So obviously, if you're the Flash, you're not going nuts with Blue Lantern power. But the point is, everybody embracing and getting caught up in the moment in the pros and cons with their respective powers. But the main threat here in issue 50 and 51 of Green Lantern was Black Lantern's Spectre, and this is the Crispus Attucks, say that 8 times quick, version of the Spectre. So the Spectre, since for those who probably know, and I know since I'm for better or for worse, I'm covering that. I have a spinoff on this. Mm-hmm. I'm kidding. I enjoy it. Hal Jordan was the Spectre previously. Hal Jordan was the last host of the Spectre before Crispus Attucks got the gig. So this version of the Spectre supposedly wants Hal Jordan back, and so they're basically trying to take out Black Lantern Spectre. So some of the cool things that actually do happen in this issue, we get which justifies this con exclusive figure. We actually got a pseudo Black Lantern Hal Jordan, because he wasn't really dead, but the Spectre basically shot the black tendrils into him, and momentarily he was taken over by the Black Lantern power, and we see him in his uniform and everything else. Ganthet and Sade, the Guardians, pretty much rescue Hal at this point, which Hal then returns the favor. And as they try to get rid of the Spectre using the trick we already know works by combining different aspects of different colors of the emotional spectrum, as long as one's green and having one of the colors. And I do like the fact that they created a stake, trying to like stake him like a vampire. So they put this big Green Lantern spike through him, expecting it to break the tether, break the Black Lantern connection, but it doesn't work. Why it doesn't work, we get to in a second. Whether you buy that or not is another story, but it fails. So Hal Jordan comes to the conclusion, going back to Green Lantern Rebirth, and that's another reason why I like this, because it's a tie-in, that after Hal got freed from the Spectre, the first thing the Spectre did after that, instead of taking on Parallax, the fear entity, was pretty much get out of Dodge. So Hal speculates that the Spectre, for whatever reason, is actually afraid of Parallax. And Parallax at this point had been split into four power batteries, individual power batteries of Hal, Guy, John, and Kyle. Ganthet's able to summon those power batteries. Parallax is released, and Hal Jordan basically wants to take Parallax and him, willingly this time, to take on the Spectre. He and Sinestro kind of fight over this. To be fair, Sinestro probably would have done better in this role, but Hal Jordan, willingly embraces the fear entity again, and for the first time in a regular Green Lantern, and certainly in this volume of Green Lantern, and beginning the tradition of having a Parallax appearance in Green Lantern 50, Hal Jordan appears in the big splash page, the end, as Parallax again. Parallax Rebirth was the title of this issue. So, gotta hate those jagged teeth. The one thing about all the stuff with Parallax by Jeff Johns, a lot of stuff I like, some stuff I don't. That jagged teeth stuff I hate. So that was Green Lantern 50. Green Lantern 51 continues this battle. You have a little sub battles, which is cute. Larfleeze and Lex Luthor fighting over the orange power battery. Hal Jordan takes on the Spectre pretty much, and it's cool because you kind of see fear and will inside the Spectre. With Spectre, when he views him using the Black Lantern vision, he sees both those emotions in him. We do find out supposedly why just sticking that spike, the Green Lantern construct spike, why he didn't break the tether with the Black Lantern connection is because the real Crispus Attucks is buried deep, 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 deep inside this gigantic, the outward appearance, I'm missing the word that I really want to use, but that's the reason why it's just basically a facade out there, that the core of the real person taken over as a Black Lantern and the actual Black Lantern ring that matters is buried deep, deep, deep inside the giant physical body of this Black Lantern Spectre. Hal Jordan, Parallax, is able to figure that out. He goes into that core of the Spectre. He uses, of course, the two powers, the two colors he can control at this point: yellow for fear, will for green. He breaks the tether. The Spectre is free, and the Spectre, of course, tries to, which I like. He's getting ready to try to punish Parallax, but actually first he wants to deal with Parallax, but he also wants to punish Necron, which we get to at the end. But before that, one of the cooler moments, I think, in the series is when mistakenly Atrocitus thinks, because the Spectre is so full of rage, that he thinks that he is basically his long-lost rage entity. So he touches him, and momentarily we get a giant Red Lantern Spectre, which did make a good HeroClix figure, though I never did get that one. Now that Hal is kind of like he accomplished his mission, but, and this disappointed me too, that he couldn't really free himself from Parallax now because of the fact that, so unfortunately there's like a tug of war going on, and Carol's able to help pull Hal Jordan, basically separate him from the fear entity. Sinestro knows that the Spectre really wants to kill Parallax at this point, so he's trying to call Parallax into him, and Parallax, the entity, disappears, which is a really cool moment because you have no idea what it means, though it does set up things in Brightest Day and leading into War of the Green Lanterns. Now the Spectre tries to punish Necron, but basically he has no soul. He has no soul, and he's not alive. So basically, the Spectre goes right through him, and he can't do anything. And then this issue ends with the universe will die now, and that cuts directly into Blackest Night. Number 7.
Right. You were thinking. I think you might have been thinking about Luke Cage because you kept saying Crispus Attucks. It's Crispus Allen.
Oh, did I say that? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're right. I did say it. You're right. Yeah, you're right. I apologize.
No worries. So we start with Blackest Night number 7, and I just already want to stop because my God, this cover. This, and we'll talk about the covers quite a bit here and the art quite a bit, but man, some of the greatest covers are here in the series, including some of the variant covers. But this Blackest Night 7's cover of the Deputy Corps members is pretty friggin' amazing. So well done.
Most of the covers in this series were really cool. Including the one we alluded to, the Necron Rises cover. That was almost. I think all the covers are good. This one, in all honesty, doesn't do as much for me. Not because it's not beautiful. It is. I just think it's probably because it's less action packed for me. So I think it does a little bit less for me. I actually prefer even number 6 with the New Guardians. The first official labeling of basically all these characters from the different emotional spectrums as the New Guardians.
So we left off with the universe about to die. The Lanterns that have been resurrected by Necron, the Black Lanterns, as well as some that are still technically dead, having been transformed into Black Lanterns by quote-unquote Black Lantern Batman, are dragging the remaining Guardians of the Universe towards Necron. Necron asks one of them, while he has him by the nape of the neck, "Why did you vow to guard the universe?" To which a Guardian replies, "I do not remember." The Light Corps shows up, starts severing connections with Black Lanterns all around Necron, but Necron himself cannot be phased. So they try they try to plan a different method, but they can't. Black Hand gets involved and starts taking him down, and him and Atrocitus recognize one another. They get into a fight. Black Hand tries to rip the heart out of Atrocitus, but can't, because when you put on, and we'll get to this a little bit later, when you put on the red ring, it replaces your heart. Black Hand goes after Hal Jordan at this point, and he gets saved by Scarecrow. At this point, Lex Luthor, who is bearing the orange ring, chooses to go absolutely apeshit with his avarice powers. He yanks the ring off of Scarecrow and puts it on himself, goes after Mara, and then 10,000 feet above Coast City, we see kind of the events of Green Lantern Corps coming into the playbook, as a massive amount of Black Lanterns are starting to descend upon the Earth, in addition to Black Lantern Xanshi, yes, a Black Lantern planet. Airwave is screwing with Jon Stewart, and then, poof, the Skittle Corps arrives, and there's Guy Gardner and Kyle and Arisia and Kilowog, and then a bunch of the other Lanterns from all the other corps in tow behind them. They start severing connections as much as they can. It's at this point the various corps members, now that they're above Earth, get a message telling each other to cooperate with the other corps to get everything taken care of. Meanwhile, down on Earth, Dove is severing connections left and right. Dove from Hawk and Dove. And she doesn't know how she's doing it, but she is. She's just sort of walking through the midst of things, and connection severed, connection severed, connection severed. At some point, she gets very close to the Black Lantern power battery when all of a sudden, Necron, let me out. And there's something inside the battery. Everybody else is still trying to subdue Orange Lantern Lex Luthor. Necron asks the Guardian in his clutches if they have any final words, to which he replies, "Long live the Corps." He slices the neck of the Guardian, and Black Hand approaches, rips the innards out of the Guardian, places it to the ground. A symbol appears on the ground, and Necron says, "Death to you all, trespasser, rise." And white light erupts from the ground. Hal asks Ganthet, what's he doing? He says he's murdered one of the Guardians. He's begun to make contact. And Sinestro says, contact with what? A kind of pod of an angelic-looking being bathed in white rises from the ground. And Black Hand says, he said, "Let there be light," and there was. It's shiny, so of course the Orange Lantern Lex Luthor wants it. Necron winds up his scythe. He says, I want all of your lives, invaders, die, and strikes this being with his scythe. And every single being in the universe feels this pain, except for the one silent panel of Black Hand, because of course he's dead. Hal asks Ganthet yet again, what is that? He says, the entity, the living light bestowed upon the universe that triggered existence itself. The Guardians may be the oldest living beings, but life did not begin on our world. Life began on Earth. We buried this fact to keep the entity protected. Sinestro says, as you buried Parallax in the Central Power Battery, as you buried the massacre of Sector 666, and Ganthet responds, it was imperative we did not draw attention to Earth. We did our best to keep humans from the Green Lantern Corps. And Sinestro responds, until Abin Sur. When he was dying, he knew all of this, didn't he? That's why he came to this wretched world. You let my friend die with everyone with me thinking him mad. You destroyed Abin Sur to protect your lies. You let the universe believe life originated on your homeworld to justify your authority. Now I will justify mine. He goes after Ganthet a little bit, but Necron continues striking the entity of life, and everybody's feeling pain, so they quickly refocus. And Barry asks, why isn't it fighting back? And Hal says, it's the entity. It's like Parallax and Ion, a living power, and Necron dug it up for us. It just needs a pilot. So he starts flying towards the entity, and Sinestro gets in his way and says, I'm alive to lead us out of the blackest night. You had your chance with Parallax. Sinestro goes up to the entity, says, I demand your power, and I will finally prove to the universe, Thal Sinestro of Gorgar, destiny awaits. I am the greatest lantern of all, and we see White Lantern Sinestro for the first time, which I have a figure of.
It is a good figure.
It's a great figure.
Still has the elongated head.
For sure.
Yes.
Great issue. I enjoyed it. Big reveal here, and that's the reason I read the dialogue. For those of you who are more of the Lantern inclination, they've been talking about one of the prophecies is that the Guardian's greatest lie will be revealed. This is the Guardian's greatest lie, that life began on Earth and not on Maltus. Another thing here that's sort of a cool hint towards past things. What does he say? Okay, so when Hal says what's Necron doing, Ganthet makes a point of saying he's murdered one of the Guardians. He's begun to make contact. You could have just said he's begun to make contact. The effect would still be the same. They add the he's murdered one of the Guardians for a reason. The doorway to Death's dimension in Green Lantern lore can only be opened or cracked with the death of an immortal. So that's why they mention this, because it's in the original Necron first appearance, right? Like an immortal. Was it a Guardian, or it was just a different immortal? Somebody dies, and that's kind of what tears open the crack to Necron's realm in his first appearance, right?
I believe that is correct.
Yeah, so that's why they mentioned that there. But otherwise, man, what do you think? Any thoughts about this one?
this is one of my favorite issues. I mean, as much as I said, I think the whole overall event kind of like maybe lost a little steam somewhere once it hit the middle. There are some really cool moments, I think, in the final 2 issues of the actual series, and I think, and I don't mean just as like awesome like splash pages or panels or anything like that. I like the reveal of the White, that even though there were rumors at this point to begin with that there was going to be another core that wasn't just the 7 of the emotional spectrum, and added to that the Black Lantern Corps to make 8, that there actually was a 9th. I think it was kind of a surprise, and now I think, and we can maybe talk about this when we wrap up, that now that we've seen Jeff Johns' run on this book as a whole, in his Green Lantern era as a whole, maybe it's not that surprising really that Sinestro kind of like had his moment here. But I think everybody would have suspected it would have been Hal going into this. That Hal would. So I think that was kind of a cool surprise, and I do like the Guardians. As we know, the Guardians are great at making keeping countless secrets for the greater good, which almost always blow up in their face and turns out to create more problems for themselves. So that was typical, and I think the way I kind of like the way Blackest Night 7 segues into Green Lantern 52, and thus also segueing back into Blackest Night 8. I just think the beats, the way those fit together, where it's perfect Jeff Johns, where that if you're not reading the Green Lantern issues, you don't miss that much or miss anything that's really related to the events of Blackest Night itself. But if you do read Green Lantern, you get so much information in Green Lantern 52 that it's really important. But again, you could just pick up from 7 to 8, and you don't need to know that if all you care about is reading the Maxi series. And I think the way that works, it's kind of like perfect. It's almost like it's like Green Lantern 52 is the Jeff Con. Green Lantern 52 is the Jeff Con, because you get to see stuff behind the scenes that you didn't see if you're just reading Blackest Night 7 and 8. But once you read it, you realize, oh, that's pretty interesting. Especially if you're a Green Lantern fan, so you understand the relevance of not just what they're showing you, but some of those things we've been waiting for. Some of the reveals we get in that book we're waiting for. So
yeah, quite a lot of big reveals in 52. Of course, the first hint of what's in the power battery happens here. If you don't remember the events of Green Lantern 25 at the end of the Sinestro Corps War, again, the art just utterly shines through in every way, shape, or form. I think every participant in JLMay has mentioned the art at one point or another. Yeah, it's just really well done across the board. Yvonne Hayes, man. Yvonne Hayes is where it's at.
That is true. And Doug Mahnke obviously does a good job in the actual Green Lantern books in this series as well. There are some cool moments, but I would agree that certainly Jeff tends to always have good artists when he's doing these events, and it pays off. It's worth it. Sometimes it helps adds to the delays of certain projects, maybe, but arguably. But the finished product is worth it. And Blackest Night, all kidding aside, Blackest Night didn't have that many major delays. I don't believe. I don't remember. I think there were some delays, but I don't think there were any major delays in Blackest Night coming out. I don't think. Not like we've seen with Doomsday Clock and other events.
Yeah. All right, you want to take on 52?
I will take on 52. I will try to sum it up relatively succinctly as well. We begin, they say 10,000 feet above Coast City, but really they're still kind of in space here, which I guess maybe is 10,000 feet, but it just sounds an interesting way of writing it. John Stewart and his band of multicolored lanterns, including Fatality and Kilowog, are trying to make their way to Coast City, dealing with a whole bunch of black lanterns that are there basically trying to be a roadblock to them. But all of a sudden, all these black lanterns start peeling off, and they start heading down to Coast City. And basically, there's something that's drawing all the black lanterns to Coast City. John kind of like he's talking to Hal via the ring, to try to like what's going on. He goes, "Oh, it's like a big it's a big shiny light named Sinestro." And now we see where we left off. We see White Lantern Sinestro. Yes, this is my destiny. Following up on what the White Entity was calling to him, that destiny awaits. And we must admit, Sinestro does look really, really impressive as a White Lantern. The uniform is cool, but so Sinestro, of course, being Sinestro, is just all it. There is some kind of nobility in what he's trying to do, but it's ego. His ego just gets in the way all the time. It's like, you have no idea the power I now possess, Necron. I am one with every living thing. I am the center of it all. And while he's doing that, being Sinestro, the White Entity calls to him. Basically, he's talking to him. And even though he's not, if it wasn't a conscious choice, Sinestro pretty much has to listen. And we kind of get an explanation of, how life with cool little images of life, primordial waters on Earth, and just we see literally the beginning of life. And they talk about the first sentient creature in the universe that ever willed itself to move. And of course, that little thing kind of looks like a shrimp almost in its original incarnation. And of course, that little thing grew into what we now know, or we had already actually found out in the Sinestro Corps War what that was. But it grew into Ion, which is the entity of the Green Lantern Corps of willpower. And they mentioned that the first creature to feel fear that left the oceans and headed towards the shore, flew to the shore because it had wings to try, that it fled for its survival. And because of the emotion of what it felt, fear, that little insect became the Parallax entity. And some people, I think, had an issue with this. They do certainly tie a lot of the other entities into biblical, the biblical stories. That you see both the Predator, which is the Sapphire, the Star Sapphire's entity, and Ophidian, who is the entity of avarice. They tie those back into the Adam and Eve story. The rage grows from murder, so the fear entity, which is going to be revealed as the Butcher, basically.
And rage, you said fear.
Oh, that's right. I did say fear that time. The rage entity that is the Butcher, as we're going to find out, that basically is supposed to be born from the Cain and Abel story. And then they have hope. They mentioned the Blue Lantern entity, hope from prayer leads to that, and compassion is offered to us all. And then
Adara and Proselyte.
Yes.
Yeah.
So basically, then we have one of the coolest images, I think, of this entire storyline. A double splash page of White Lantern Sinestro saying "We live," and all the entities of the emotional spectrum surrounding him in their proper order as far as being grouped together. So you have Ion is the center of the emotional spectrum, or basically the absence of emotion controlling you, if you will, willpower. Above Sinestro's head, on the left, you have Parallax, Ophidian, and the Butcher, and you have Adara, Proselyte, and the Predator on the right-hand side. Of course, at that moment, when Sinestro was all White Lantern out, Necron sneaks up behind him and uses his scythe and splits him down the middle. And Necron's all cocky now. It's like, "Oh, you cannot hide from me any longer, entity." And he kind of turns his efforts back to his plan, which was trying to deal with to kill the White Entity. We kind of get a diversion here with because of what's going on with Black Lantern Xanshi wreaking havoc on Earth. So John, good old John, because killing Xanshi wasn't good enough once, he has to do it again. So he and his little multicolored lantern task force go to take out Xanshi and blow it up, while Hal's basically trying to stem the tide of everything going on in Coast City. Much like what happened with Crispus Allen, got that one right, with that version of the Spectre, the John Stewart task force has to go deep, deep, deep inside Xanshi to be able to break the tether and to sever the Black Lantern connection, and it does. So that ends Black Lantern Xanshi, which has a huge effect on Necron. Necron screams when that happens, and a whole bunch of other Black Lanterns just start disappearing immediately. Meanwhile, at that moment, the John Stewart's lanterns basically are have made their way back down to Earth at this point, and they're trying to protect all the pieces of Xanshi from falling and destroying Coast City. And at this point, we hear Sinestro of Korogor live, and Sinestro speaks, "Lantern, stand aside. I have been reborn." It's like, I am now the true guardian of the universe. And we see Sinestro bathed in white light with basically the white entity kind of like inside him, or seemingly, maybe symbolically around him. Hal goes, "The white light, he's alive." To be concluded in Blackest Night. Numero ocho.
Yeah, good stuff. I like how they sort of put the I mean, they're forever going to come back to this with Jon Stewart. It's one of it's one of my pet peeves about Jon Stewart in general, is they always come back to like the same three things, one of which is his guilt over Xanshi. But I like how they attempt to try and put the Xanshi stuff to bed here, letting him face down Kat Matui, letting him destroy Black Lantern, Xanshi, alongside of Fatality, who was always going after John because of his destruction of Xanshi. So they did the best they could to try and put that to bed. DC is forever going to come back to that as almost their way of trying to characterize John, which I think is a mistake, to try and mire him in these 3 or 4 events of his past rather than moving forward. But that's just me, and that's just my commentary. If you've never listened to this show before, I just think they go back to the well too much with Jon Stewart. It's either they don't do this as much, but it's either the angry black architect, the military man, the stoic, serious, ex-Marine, the guilt he has over Xanshi, and the guilt he has over Kat Matui. Like one of those 4 things is something they your next big arcs with Jon Stewart that you ever see, they always rely super heavily on one of them, maybe 2 of them I could see, his architecture and his activism past as well as his military past. Those are his past. It's a big part of who he ends up becoming. But to keep bringing up Xanshi and to keep bringing up Katma, it gets old quick. But that's neither here nor there. So I do like how they attempted to put that to bed. I like how claustrophobic this all feels too. I mean, everything is happening all at once. There's not a moment where, while things are being revealed, you're not seeing other lanterns just either severing connections or trying to avoid being killed or whatever by Black Lanterns around them. I mean, everybody is being overrun by waves of either water or death or whatever. I did like the inclusion of Drick. I don't know if others have mentioned this at this point, but Drick is a lantern with a very unique background. Before Blackest Night began, and I'm talking, God, when did Drick's original storyline happen? Was that the 80s?
I think so.
Drick, Green Lantern. Let's see here. I believe so. Something happens to Drick. Let's see. I'll just read it here from the Green Lantern wiki. Drick was a native of the planet Crick, and at some point became a member of the Green Lantern Corps, where he was part of the Green Lantern Corps of Clyminde, where he developed a reputation for being a master strategist. During his service to the Guardians of the Universe, his sector came under attack from the renegade Green Lantern Sinestro, who attacked with the full power of the Mad God Sector 3600, which destroyed entire worlds and devastated the protectors of that region of space. Of the few survivors were Floto Span and Olapet, with Drick himself dying in the event. However, something unusual occurred. Despite having been killed, Drick's Green Lantern power ring would not allow his life energy to depart his body, keeping him half alive and half dead. So, Drick, in Green Lantern lore, has always been half alive and half dead. So when Blackest Night starts, that the fact that Jeff Johns did not leave that stone unturned was very interesting to me. That they have a Black Lantern on their side who's kind of giving them exposition into what's happening on the Black Lantern side of things. Kind of the same way Deadman, we'll get to later, acts as this, as he keeps jumping from place to place.
That is true.
Anything else about this issue?
Yeah, I think, well, again, from a Green Lantern perspective, obviously we'd been waiting for the reveal of the other entities.
Mm-hmm.
Because up to this point, we knew about Parallax, and we knew about Ion since the Sinestro Corps War. It was speculated on for a while before it was confirmed that the Predator was going to be retconned into the Star Sapphire entity, and that was confirmed in Green Lantern 43, that prologue issue, the Blackest, when Black Hand became the Black entity, the entity of the Black Lantern Corps. That was the little exposition there, the reveal about that. But seeing, like, I think, but this was the first time that we actually saw what a Ophidian, Proselyte, and
Adara.
I thought I said Adara. I didn't say Adara.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I could have, but Adara, Proselyte, the Butcher, and had we seen was Ophidian hinted at before or no? I'm trying.
We hadn't seen Ophidian.
Okay. So this was kind of a big moment because they had already established that every color, every core of the emotion, part of the emotional spectrum had a living, breathing entity that represented it. So not only does this give you an explanation, no, obviously they spend a little more time on Parallax and Ion because they are the most important ones for the most part in Green Lantern mythology up to this point. Obviously, the Predator goes back a while before it was technically the retconned into being, logically to a large extent, but still into that love entity. Yeah, that was a pretty big reveal, and just the idea of getting the first hint of what some of the power that the White Lantern entity was capable of doing. That if you were a White Lantern, what you could do. Obviously, we're going to get more of a taste of that next in the final issue of Blackest 9/8. But I like the way they kind of open the door for that. The fact that basically, if you emerge with the White Lantern entity, dying is really not something you got to worry about.
Mm-hmm. All right, Blackest Night number 8, the finale.
Cool.
All right, guys, we pick up where we left off. Sinestro is facing down Necron. Sinestro rips into Necron, chaining him down, rips his heart out of him, and his scythe falls to the ground. But nope, Necron's not dead. Another random Black Lantern grabs Necron's scythe and becomes Necron.
So he's like Ultron, basically.
So in response, Necron tries to rip the entity out of Sinestro. Lex thinks this is a fantastic time to grab all the rings to have the power to save his world, but he gets knocked out by Larfleeze, who slams him over the head with the orange power battery. And he's like, "Victory is mine, Baldy, and if you had any hair, I'd take that too." And then everybody's minds echo with "Victory belongs to you only for the moment, Orange Lantern, and that moment is fleeting, as are your lives." As Black Lantern Martian Manhunter chooses to make his entrance and fight against the living, the cavalry arrives behind him with Black Lantern Firestorm, the Hawks, Ralph and Sue, Black Lantern Superman, Animal Man, Green Arrow, just a bunch of people. There's Black Lantern Hawk, bunch of them back there. Meanwhile, Hal's brother and his niece and nephew and his sister-in-law are gathered in their apartment in Coast City. And he says, "What's Uncle Hal always say, kids?" And they say, "No fear." As they're watching all this occur outside their windows in Coast City. Mara is calling one of the Black Lanterns a tramp. Is that Dolphin? I'm pretty sure it's Dolphin.
I think so, yes.
Yeah. Indigo 1 makes contact and says, "Backup is here." Hal says, "Great," right as their cavalry arrives in the form of all the lanterns and all of the other Leaguers. All the Lanterns are kind of easy to point out, but I wanted to point out a lot of the Leaguers just and the DC Universe heroes because of kind of what we said earlier. There's Starfire, there's Gar, there's Fire, there's Atom, there's Cassie, Cyborg, Black Canary, Booster Gold, Power Girl, Mr. Terrific, Uncle Sam, Jay Garrick. There's Alan Scott over under Hal's armpit. There's Dove. There's a crap ton of them over here. You can actually see some of. One thing that's interesting is Atrocitus is fighting against the Black Lantern inversions.
Yes, that is pretty cool.
That you can kind of see over there, so that's really cool. But they all point all the Lanterns point their individual beams towards Necron as Necron struggles against the entity. It does nothing. And why is that? Well, Guy is starting to talk. He says, because if you think we got the room or ability to galvanize like that, Kyle, you should trade the ring in for a blue one. And he stumbles as he says, can't get the ring to work. Never was into jewelry anyway. And Hal's like, Guy? He's like, it's dead, man, Lantern. I've been floating inside these things and learning Necron is sentient blackness. He's the empty space between atoms and planets. Necron can only play patty cake with us because he's created a tether to the land of the living. Black Hand. If you fix Black Hand, you shut the door in Necron's face and lock him in his room. Get his heart beating again. He's like, well, how the hell are we supposed to do that? Hey, you're the superhero. I'm just the ghost with the most. And then that's when Guy gets his control of his body back and kicks Deadman out. He's like, whatever, back on track. Hey, Skeletor, beware our power. That's another pop culture reference from Guy that you expect out of nowhere because earlier in the series he mentions the Tholian web. But whatever. Necron finally separates the entity from Sinestro. And as the entity is on the ground recovering, Hal leaps toward it, takes control. He says, "We all chose life when given the chance." And so Barry earlier when he's saving Hal says, "Life doesn't give us purpose, Black Hand. We give life purpose." Hal says, I may have some kind of morbid connection to Necron, but I have a stronger connection to life. Black Lantern Superman says, not after I'm through with you. He says, you do too, Superman. Doomsday put you down, but you got back up. Everyone you think you allowed back did it themselves, Necron. We all chose life when given the chance. He takes the power of the entity, and then the Black Lantern rings that are wearing the resurrected heroes, Superman, and a bunch of the others that turned into Black Lanterns because of the Black Lantern quote-unquote Batman. Their black rings connections sever, but the bodies don't go away. Star Sapphire, Wonder Woman, Blue Lantern, Flash, their connections to their rings are overridden. As Hal says, we are all connected. And if anyone is a part of the White Lantern Corps, it's us. And you see Kid Flash, and you see Ice, and you see Wonder Woman, Animal Man, Flash, Green Arrow, Wonder Woman, Superman, and Connor Kent alongside Hal, all as White Lanterns, pointing their rings and energy at Black Hand. He says, we chose to live again. Now we choose it for you. William Hand of Earth, live. He does live. He coughs up another ring, this time a white ring. It shoots through the atmosphere, through the sky, through a Necron's chest, straight towards the power battery as Necron says it burns, and then Anti-Monitor of Quard, live. And Anti-Monitor himself is resurrected as he comes bursting out of the central power battery. He immediately tries to take his vengeance against Necron. He says, you're nothing, go back to your universe, creature, this one is mine. And he dispatches and gets rid of Anti-Monitor from his sights just as easily as he did the Spectre. And meanwhile, Black Hand is coughing up more and more and more white rings. And Necron says, no, you're the trespassers. You are the enemies to existence. And then, bam, let there be light. And then Amon Tomaz of Earth, Jenny Lynn Hayden, Dick Peter Harkness, Hank Hall, Maxwell Lord, Ronnie Raymond, Eobard Thawne, Kendra Saunders, Carter Hall, John Jones, Arthur Curry, Boston Brand live. And the heroes that will be resurrected at the end of this make their way into the world, resurrected fresh on the heels of those white rings that Black Hand was coughing up. And if you didn't catch all the names, you have Maxwell Lord, you have Reverse Flash, you have Hank Hall, which is the original Hawk. I apologize. Earlier I said Ice. It was not. It's Jade. It was Ice. Sorry. We have Jade. We have Captain Boomerang. We have Ronnie Raymond Firestorm. We had Martian Manhunter, Aquaman, Hawkman, Hawkgirl, Deadman, and what was his name? What was his hero name or whatever? Because Black Hand had his own Marvel family during 52. What was Osiris? That's his name.
Okay.
Yeah.
I knew it was Osiris, but unfortunately, the clues you were giving, I thought that's where you were going, but I wasn't. Yeah. I was waiting for that one thing. It's like, who's the guy all the way on the right on the splash page? Oh, Osiris.
Yeah. So everybody is staring in absolute shock as these 12 heroes and villains are resurrected. The first one to see it is Mara as she sees Arthur. Her rage is compromised as she feels love, and her red ring cracks and falls apart. Because the red ring replaces your heart, Mara falls to the ground. She's going into cardiac arrest. Arthur tries to cradle her. This is when Star Sapphire and Blue and St. Walker show up. She restarts. Star Sapphire Carol Ferris restarts Mara's heart with the love connection that her and Arthur share, while St. Walker cures her of the effects of the red ring with his blue light. She says, "Arthur, are we dead?" And he says, "No," and they embrace. And God, man, that's probably one of the more beautiful panels there. Just while we're on it, with them two hugging. Hawkman looks at Hawkgirl and says, "Kendra, are you all right?" She says, "Kendra, Shiera, Cinnamon, I remember everything. I remember our past lives. I remember our time with the JSA and the Justice League. But most of all, I remember you." She takes off her helmet. Her hair is red. It's Shiera. Everyone feels, welcomes John back. This is when Firestorm freaks out. It's like, "Who are you? Get out of my head." Firestorm splits, and it's Ronnie and Jason. And Jason has been, for those of you playing along at home, has been stuck inside of Black Lantern Firestorm ever since towards the beginning of this event, when Black Lantern Ronnie Raymond Firestorm took in Jason and forced him to watch as he killed Jason's girlfriend, Jen, turned her into salt. Adam says, Ronnie's like, "Adam, what's going on? Where's Professor Stein?" Hawk is freaking out. Guy recognizes Maxwell Lord, but not quick enough because Maxwell uses his powers and escapes. Guy loses track of him. Jade runs over and kisses Kyle right in front of his new girlfriend, Sora. Osiris says he wants to go home. Flash tries to take on Thawne. He says, "I am going home." And he's like, Digger tries to take on the Flash. He gets punched. And Barry looks around, he's like, "Ralph and Sue," and he says, "They're not here." And Barry says, "Why?" And then, "Oh no, this can't be happening." And everybody turns to see Deadman. He's like, "You can see me. This isn't right. I'm not supposed to be here." And Deadman lives. Boston lives. And then Larfleeze throws the unconscious Lex Luthor to the ground and says, "Here," fulfilling a prophecy that by the end of the Blackest Night, Larfleeze would give somebody something. Because Blackest Night is over, Sade agrees to go with Larfleeze because Larfleeze would not give the Lanterns his help and his light for Blackest Night unless they agreed to give him his own guardian. They also look around and realize that Indigo One and her tribe is gone, as well as Black Hand. We go over to the Indigo's homeworld, and we see Black Hand wearing chained up just like the other Indigo tribe, having his own staff and his own symbol, and he's under the sway. They wrap up. Blackest Night and head into tomorrow. There's a crater off of a route in the middle of nowhere, and we see a white lantern, a literal white lantern, sitting in a crater as we head into the next event, Brightest Day. Hell of an issue here, man. So much stuff happens. I should probably extrapolate some of this maybe a little bit because, it's not like next year JLMay is going to be Brightest Day. So we might as well take some of this and run with it here. The biggest thing being the resurrected heroes. They all have a tie and a sort of destiny mission to complete during Brightest Day. So you will see all of these characters again during Brightest Day as they fulfill their various missions. Some of them, if I remember right, are very, very random, almost pointless. They essentially have to earn their life back by completing some sort of a mission.
Yeah, that's that pretty much sums it up. That if they have a challenge and a choice they have to complete. Once they find out what that reason is, and if they fail, then pretty much, well, there goes that redo you got.
Yeah. Boston's story is probably one of the most compellings out of all those. He ends up falling in love with Dove. It's just really well. I've always liked Deadman, and having that focus, I was really excited. That's one of the things that pulled me into Brightest Day and kept me going in Brightest Day despite some of this disagreement I had. The Hawks start talking about their past lives here a little bit. That also ties into Brightest Day. They play a big part in that and their connection to the Star Sapphires. The Star Sapphires, in the center of their power battery, have the original bodies of Katar and Shayera. The original bodies as their sort of embodiment of love that helps power the battery. Another thing that happens here, this image with Black Hand, you're revealed much later. I can't remember if it was in Brightest Day or even beyond that. The Indigo power is never really spoken about here during Blackest Night, but essentially it's a prison. It's its own version of a prison. The ring wears the bearer much like the black ring wears the corpse. It attaches itself to the criminal and forces them to feel compassion. And it's basically a way of rehabilitating them, but it takes a long-ass time. In the meantime, these beings are servants of compassion. So basically, every Indigo Lantern you've ever seen is a mass murderer or criminal in the extreme in some way, shape, or form, but who are being imprisoned by the Indigo light of compassion and forced to feel compassion to make it, atone for their various crimes across the universe. So that's sort of what is underway with Black Hand. The Indigo One and her tribe has taken it upon themselves to, rather than kill Black Hand or put him in some sort of other prison, they just make him part of their core.
And we don't get that revealed to the New 52.
True. We do run into Anti-Monitor later on in all of this, and he brings back a lot of the Black Lantern versions of some people after the fact in his own little sort of death squad, one of which includes Deathstorm. So there's a lot of Firestorm stuff that happens in Brightest Day as well, which I also really enjoyed. But there's a lot of stuff that continues their threads further on in the DC universe, as you would expect with any massive DC Comics event like this. But
it's just unfortunate it didn't stick because Brightest Day almost immediately after Brightest Day we ended up getting the New 52, which is kind of like not only
Flashpoint.
Yes, not only does it ruin a lot of where they were going with New 52, it pretty much made it all irrelevant. But where they were going with Brightest Day, the New 52 and Flashpoint and everything makes it pretty much all irrelevant, which sucks. Because I like Brightest Day. I thought the miniseries was pretty interesting overall.
Yeah. I do. One of the things, I mean, I know Necron is dispatched pretty quickly after this, but to have like all these, they did this a lot. There were all these moments where you're like, oh shit, the fix for Necron is here. Like when one of the first moments that happens is the new Guardians show up and they aim all of their beams of light at Necron, and it does nothing, has zero effect. And you're like, oh, okay, well that didn't work. And then in one of the issues you recapped, they free the Spectre, and you're like, oh shit, Spectre can take care of this. And then one word. Be gone. The Spectre just up and disappears. So and you're like, oh, well, that didn't work either. Then the freaking Anti-Monitor comes back to life, immediately turns on Necron, starts firing all of his power at him, which, if you've ever read Crisis, come on. And Necron's like, oh, then you're nothing. So go back to your universe. This one's mine. And there goes the Anti-Monitor. And you're like, this dude shrugged off the Spectre and the Anti-Monitor. What? Like they do a lot to really showcase how utterly unstoppable, for the most part, Necron is. How much of a force of nature he is. He's not your atypical villain. He's not a super powered bad guy like the Anti-Monitor. As a matter of fact, you're almost putting force of nature against force of nature in terms of pitting Anti-Monitor against Necron. And even Necron wins out against that. And it's just like, if it didn't happen on the next page, just right after that confrontation with the Anti-Monitor, you would just think, what could they possibly do?
Yeah, I think, again, this goes back to whether you were just reading the Blackest Night series or whether you were reading some of the Green Lantern issues too. Because if you read Green Lantern 43, you probably got a hint of maybe what his weakness was. But again, until they introduced the White Entity and the White Lantern Corps, finding that weakness didn't mean anything necessarily because you wouldn't know how to exploit it or do anything with it.
Yeah. Just so many great visuals. I mean, I cannot stop looking at the art. Jeff Johns writer, Yvonne Hayes is the penciler, Auclair Albert and Joe Prado were the inkers. Alex Sinclair is the colorist. Nick Napolitano is the letterer. Adam Schlagman is the associate editor. Eddie Berganza is the editor. The cover was by Reese Albert and Sinclair. The alternate cover was by Doug Monkey, Christian LanternCast, and Randy Mayer. And special thanks to Tony Avina. But man, there is not a panel in here that I absolutely love Yvonne Hayes' work. And Blackest Night, man, is just it's the epitome of it. Because I don't think, look, he's been doing work since Blackest Night. He'll do a lot of work during Brightest Day. But man, I'm not trying to say that Yvonne Hayes' work has gone downhill since Blackest Night, but it's very hard for me to look at anything he does even now and go, that's better than Blackest Night. I mean, he's had a lot of great moments, don't get me wrong, past Blackest Night, but in terms of just sheer panel after panel after panel, just hit. Holy crap! They just really delivers during Blackest Night.
I think that's a good summation of it. It's not just the quality; it's just capturing the tone of the story. I think that's something that comes across. He again, like I mentioned earlier, the idea of taking Jeff's advice about, this is a horror story. Basically, run with that. That don't be afraid, to go dark because it's supposed to be a horror story. And he does. He goes with it, and I think that the overall atmosphere in the majority of the 8 issues of Blackest Night, and not counting the Zero issue, but still, even though the Zero issue has obviously has some pretty dark moments in it too, I just think the art is fantastic, and it's perfectly suited for the story that Jeff wanted to tell.
Yeah. There's just so much. I mean, I don't know what else to say about number 8, but since we're on art, I wanted to talk about it a bit about the art through the rest of this event. Lots of fantastic moments. JSA maybe had one of my favorite moments artistically, and there's a couple. It's off in a couple of places here and there, but there's a moment in the JSA miniseries issue 2 where Jessie Quick puts on her Jessie Quick costume instead of her Liberty Bell costume and poses in the rain. And I thought that always looked very cool. The cover to Starman number 81 is just so consistently one of my favorites. And I am not even I don't have like that big of a connection to James Robinson Starman. But holy crap, that cover just grabs me every freaking time I see it. Not only do the covers hit in a lot of these, but the variant covers for a lot of them hit so much more. It's so hard to pick one because you'll be looking at these in the back issue bins, and because of the print run of Blackest Night, you're going to see a lot of the variant covers out in the back issue bins, and man, it's so hard to choose between them in almost every case.
This event was one of the better overall, not only I think because we liked the story, I just think just the way it was organized and planned, I think, including the art and the way they were, and the tone of not just, obviously we talked about the main series, but a lot of the miniseries, the individual miniseries for the different groups and characters. Yeah, I think this was one of their better events that they've done, certainly,
yeah.
And even in the time period since. I think there have been some events that have been cool, and some events that have had cool moments, but so many haven't had big payoffs, let alone how they look, or they just haven't had a draw, whether it's Final Crisis just not really working, whether it's something like Convergence, that there were some cool moments in it, especially again if you're a Green Lantern fan, there were some cool moments in it, but it just didn't seem like it mattered. And even though some of the art was pretty cool in it, this just seemed like it was a well organized, well thought out event, and probably also because of the fact that they knew Blackest Night was going to lead into Brightest Day, which was not going to be as big it wasn't going to be as big of an event on any level compared to Blackest Night, but they knew they were going to pick up on threads from this storyline directly, almost immediately following it going forward, because they had somewhere else they were going to go with it. So I think that helps too in the tone and making it maybe that made them put a little more effort into it going across the entire DC line, as opposed to just we just really got to focus on the major series and because that's all it's going to be. No, they knew that it was they had bigger plans, and of course the New 52 kind of Flashpoint and the New 52 kind of ruined it, but
yeah. I did want to ask, what are just some of your favorite moments from Blackest Night, just as a way to kind of start the wrap up to this. I wanted to throw out a few myself. I'd be remiss as the Ragman guy not to point out the moment from Untold Tales of the Blackest Night, number 1, where they gave a couple of 2 pages to a moment that they must have been deleted from one of the Blackest Night main issues, because it's written by Jeff Johns with pencils by Yvonne Hayes.
I think they mentioned that in the director's cut. I'm grabbing it now. I'm pretty sure. I think that. Let's see if it I'm not gonna cut you off, but I just want to let you know I'm gonna look for that to see if I can find where the hell it is.
Yeah, it's you see Rory Regan. Your suit is an ancient patchwork prison of people stitched together by your vengeance. Each rag a different transgressor you've stolen. You may be their jailer, Rory Regan, but we are their masters, and we want your inmates back. As just a whole crap ton of rings fly out of Black Hand and towards Rory, and they attach themselves to each one of the patches in his suit and rip off in different directions as all those different souls that are trapped in his suit of souls just rise. That is such a cool moment. and it's followed immediately by this comedic moment of the Rainbow Raiders agreeing to a suicide pact right before Blackest Night begins, but it doesn't matter because nobody gives a shit about the Rainbow Raiders to begin with, enough for them to be resurrected as Black Lanterns and used to toy with people's emotions because nobody cares.
both of the scripts for those. So I was going to mention the Rainbow Raiders scene too. That they both are in the section of the director's cut. There's a 2-page section that says scenes from the cutting room floor. And they just have deleted Rainbow Raiders scene by Jeff Johns, and they have, which is a lot less. Obviously, there's not much to that, but there's much more script to the deleted Ragman scene. So I'm going to only assume that. Well, see, it's kind of hard because they say this is Blackest Night. The Blackest Night director's cut. They don't say it's black. They don't say it's like just for issue 1. It's an overview. So so obviously it was supposed to be part of the series, not necessarily the first issue, but it definitely was supposed to be in Blackest Night proper, I guess we can say, at some point.
Yeah, I love it. Like the Rainbow Raiders are like the dead are taking over the Earth. Here's to being on the winning side. They all take their suicide shot. They collapse to the ground dead, and the panel of them just zoomed in of them all, their bodies on the ground, is the Flash saying, as far as we know, only the dead with emotional ties to us are rising. The rest are staying in their graves.
Yep. That's what it says on the script. Yep.
Oh, God, that's hilarious. The Atom and Hawkman, that issue, all the stuff that happens between him and Jean while he's trying to protect Indigo 1 from sending out a message to all the Lanterns to tell them to come to Earth. That was just a great moment. Man, I don't know where else to go with it. Quite honestly, the Adventure Comic stuff with Superboy Prime was always really interesting to me. Personally, I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling at this point. And of course the just if you get a chance, man, the art in the Wonder Woman miniseries by Nicholas Scott was just always really knocking it out of the park, and it did not hurt a bit that Nay Ruffino was doing the colors for that. Because I don't remember, not only was the art really beautiful, but the colors really pop in this Wonder Woman mini, and the fight between Wonder Woman and Red Lantern Mara, and how they interact with each other in that was just really cool.
I think there were many memorable spin-offs in this. I like the Superman one. The Superman was, I think, one of the most impactful. I remember. That's the one. That's one of the ones that stands out to me. Of all of them, I think that's the one. I think some of the Batman. I think the Batman one might too. I do kind of remember that one. But it was, this was a really, really good event, and again, probably because it was the absolute. Green Lantern's never been. This was the peak of that golden age of Green Lantern, the modern golden age anyway that we've had of Green Lantern from probably 2005 through maybe 2010 or 11. That this was the pinnacle. So I think that it's real easy to look back and have fond memories. I was just by looking in some of these books just reminds, and of course I can get reminded anytime I want by seeing all these cases I have of these things downstairs. But all the Blackest Night action figures they had. All the waves after waves after waves of those figures that they had. So this was a big deal, and they knew it was a big deal, and they put it together and marketed well as a big deal. And I guess it surprises me that some people really don't like this event. But if you're if you just only see it as an event, should be like as a team kind of thing, like a team. They should be wrapped around a team, not maybe more character specific. Then I guess I could see a little bit of the pushback to it, but
There's also the people who don't like it just because of how bleak it is, and how dark the story is. And to that, I did want to kind of bring up the intricacy of this. This isn't just a horror story. I mean, it is. Don't get me wrong, but the way the rings interact, there's some thought put into this stuff in here. When someone becomes a Red Lantern or a Star Sapphire, those are the extreme ends of the emotional spectrum, and they react in extreme ways. So like for instance, some of the way the different cores interact with each other. The Blue Lanterns, for example, they can't do anything offensively without a Green Lantern nearby. Why? Because without the will to do something, hope doesn't have any effect for the most part. I mean, you can debate that all you want in terms of, theoretically or whatever, but without the will to take action, hope is just that, hope. So only when a Green Lantern is around do the Blue Lanterns fully power up and can deal some damage. Additionally, when the Blue Lanterns are around the Green Lanterns, they can supercharge the Green Lanterns because hope gives Will something to fight for.
Which of course they retconned after the fact, as we found out that they're capable of, on their own, they're capable of basically. I think the way we were supposed to take it as things. You were correct, as they introduced more stuff. But I think that was like the default power. Kind of like when Kyle had the Blue Lantern ring in the War of the Green Lanterns. And not that he wanted to, but he was amping up all the Green Lanterns they were fighting because he couldn't control it. I think that's a default in the Blue. And as we found out, they were capable, like in Lights Out, we found out they were capable of upping in the Indigo Tribe power. So Kyle could get them out of there. So there's every reason to believe they could amp up Love too, when we found out. So it was painful for St. Walker to go through the process that he was also capable of doing the same, based on a more complex relationship between fear and hope, that he was able to do it. So it's very possible. And I think there was another story in the future that talked about that inferred that the idea that basically Blue Lanterns could probably amp up every core under the right circumstances, but.
Stop tearing down the logic I'm trying to put in. Trying to make a point here.
Your point, and that point, and I was going to say this too. I thought the explanation they gave about how you needed that element, the way they were first, not just because that was a really good explanation, and also we also know that Ganthet and Sade created the Blue Lantern Corps to supplement the Greens. So it makes perfect sense that their powers would work in tandem and feed off of each other and help each other. That made perfect sense too. But I like that explanation that hope by itself is it's not meaningless, but it's relatively powerless. You need the will, to take action and to go forward, to take that hope and do something with it. And that's why they work well together. So yes.
And just to continue on, Violet can heal Reds. That's we see that with Mara and Carol Ferris when Mara sees Arthur, because the only way to calm down and stifle someone's rage is to kind of combat it with the opposite side of the spectrum, with love.
Because of the tether too, the emotional tether connection that Sapphires use.
Yeah. Yeah, and Blue can assuage Orange. We see that a moment when in a prior Green Lantern issue where St. Walker kneels in front of Larfleeze and his hunger sort of abates for a little bit. And Indigo can mimic other lantern lights when it wants and tap into their spectrum. Because compassion, you feel what others feel, and you're compassionate and you empathize with them. A lot of the interactions that the various cores have with each other, and the way the rings interact and the powers interact, and even the way the emotional spectrum is arranged. Rage and love are complete emotional opposites. They're also complete color spectrum opposites as a result. The opposite of greed is hope. I'm sorry, the opposite of greed is compassion. The opposite of fear is hope. I mean, and you know that it just made a lot of sense the way he arranged it, the way he made sure that these things interacted, the way he tried to put rules on all of this, and so it just wasn't a big cluster F. I mean, there was so much thought and stuff put into this, and you know, even Jeff himself has, you know, a personal story with death. You know, his sister, who he modeled Stargirl after. You know, it was said at one point, I think by Jeff himself, that Blackest Night was him sort of working out some of his thoughts on death. So there was so much more to this story than just a straightforward grim horror story.
Oh yes, absolutely.
And you could feel it reading it, I felt, and I just think that's part of what makes it so iconic. And man, I mean, despite the fact that time just moves so fast in general, like, man, I can't believe it's been 10 years.
On some level, I can, because I just going back from everything that personally I can go back and think everything that's changed in my life from 2009 till now. I could definitely, it does on one level, which is how time works as we get older. That on some level, yeah, it seems like, oh my God, it was just yesterday. But on some level, it's like, wow, there's so much that's gone on since then. And I think for Green Lantern fans, again, I think Blackest Night's always going to be special because of, you know, this was like our event, you know, that this was a whole DC, and very well publicized too. It wasn't, you know, it got a lot of coverage, you know, it got mainstream coverage and things like that too. And between, you know, I just think that is where we were from, especially if you're a Hal Jordan fan too, from where you were from like Emerald Twilight going forward. But just the way, you know, Kyle's book started petering out, and the decision to go back to Hal and Green Lantern Rebirth, and how well received Green Lantern Rebirth was, and going forward, and just how strong it became a brand, it became a franchise. Obviously, it's at the moment it's not. Again, it's pretty much down to one book. But for a while, what do we have? We had 4 or 5 books, I think, at the peak when you count the Sinestro book and everything else that came out post, you know, in the New 52 era. Anyway, at one point you had that many books, Green Lantern or Lantern related, that were being published at the same time, and this all was the build up from and post Blackest Night, and it wasn't just how you look, like we mentioned before, like Sinestro. I mean, Sinestro became such a big player across the DCU when obviously he'd been off the board and hadn't been a big, even before he was off the board, you know, going back to Emerald Twilight time, that he, even from that point going forward when he was quote unquote dead, that he really wasn't being used. And how he was being used, kind of like, oh, I'm not going to say he was like Black Hand like entirely, where Black Hand was kind of like a joke, but it'd been a long time since Sinestro was relevant. And you look at the Jeff Johns run, which I alluded to before, you can make a strong case that if you look at everything that he did and the way he wrote these characters, that in a way everything from Green Lantern Rebirth to the end of Wrath of the First Lantern was arguably, one could make the case it was just about Sinestro as much as it was about Hal Jordan, or it was almost an equal story that he was telling, since he put so much emphasis on Sinestro and trying to make Sinestro more of a complex hero or a complex villain or a fallen hero, and playing up the elements of Sinestro that made him less horrible. So I think that was an interesting choice. So, and you saw that obviously in the series with the decision to make that he was the White Lantern. Hal got to be a White Lantern too, but at the time when there was only one White Lantern and the entity was entirely inside one person, Sinestro was the one who did it. So, and I think that's kind of what bothers me a little bit more about when Hal took Parallax back into him, that it wasn't as effective. You know, you thought this was a cool moment, maybe almost like a redemptive moment too for Hal, because now he knew what he was getting into and he was doing this on purpose. on purpose to accomplish something, and at least have him be able to control Parallax better. And you can make a case maybe he did until they took care of the Spectre, and then it all went downhill. But I kind of thought that was again a negative reflection on Hal. As we saw, obviously, even Sinestro, as a host of the Parallax entity, was able to do a better job for a certain period of time. He would have, while they did acknowledge he would have lost control over it too over time because of his control of fear. He was correct. He was more aptly suited for that task, to being able to use it as a weapon, as we've seen multiple times since, as opposed to just hoping that it's like kind of like the Hulk in the Ed Norton version, that I can't control it, but kind of like steer it, like you just point him in the right direction, hope it does what it wants. That's kind of what Hal was seemingly really essentially hoping to do, or the end result was that.
Yeah. I feel like, as the last podcast to join this big event and close things out, we should be saying more, but I mean, I think we said all we can. Is there anything else you want to say about the event or the issues we covered tonight?
I think, generally speaking, I'm just trying to say something, obviously, something deep and wise that I haven't already tried to at least imply during the show. It's just something that's very, very memorable to me. I have a lot of attachment to the story and the build-up to it, where I was in my life at the time too. It just is important, and I guess in a way sometimes I think that, for better or for worse, I think that sometimes that colors my view on where we are in Green Lantern, because you see such a dramatic difference, how relatively unimportant Green Lantern as a franchise currently is. Yes, we have Grant Morrison for as long as he stays in the book, so we do have a big name writer, arguably a bigger. We've talked about this on our show. Arguably the biggest name writer we've had on this book ever. Certainly since Jeff Johns left, but arguably him taking this book, that he was bigger than Jeff Johns was when Jeff Johns, even came on Green Lantern Rebirth, as far as the name recognition is like, oh yeah. So, but I miss the days when you really looked forward to whenever the next issue came out, whether it was of the miniseries, the maxi series, or just Green Lantern in general. That you were looking forward to the next issue because it was just, at least from my perspective, it was just that interesting and just that good. And it's been a long time since actually I can honestly say I've been really excited on a regular basis. Once in a while for a particular issue you might. But it's been a long time since I've had that kind of overall enthusiasm. So.
For sure. I would agree with a lot of that. Blackest Night was my first free comic book day. It was my first big event. It was right as I was getting into Green Lantern. It was right as I was getting into comics. It was going to be a big nostalgia point for me, and it was going to be something I wanted to push hard to celebrate and cover the 10th anniversary. And regardless of if you were 100% positive on it, 100% negative on it, or somewhere in between, I don't think you can deny that Blackest Night is one of the last big, massive, successful, line-wide crossovers that DC has had in quite a while, and it was quite a thing to behold as it was coming out. So if you guys are listening to this episode and you want to listen to more Blackest Night coverage, I'm going to give you the entire list of everything that has been covered or will be covered for JLMay 2019 as we finish this up. The podcast of OA covered Blackest Night 0 and Green Lantern number 43. Chris and Reggie's Cosmic Treadmill covered Blackest Night 1. The Idlehead of Diablo covered Blackest Night 2 and Green Lantern 44. The Fire and Water podcast covered Blackest Night number 3. Head Speaks covered Blackest Night number 4. Coffee and Comics podcast covered Blackest Night number 5. The Long Box Crusade covered Blackest Night number 6. We, of course, covered Blackest Night 7, Green Lantern 52, and Blackest Night 8, the finale. Waiting for Doom, we'll be covering Doom Patrol number 4 and number 5. Task Force X covered the Suicide Squad issue and the Secret Six issues. Justice's First Dawn covered the Justice League issues. Coffee and Comics also covered the Adventure Comics issues, as well as the Untold Tales of the Blackest Night issue. The Starman Manhunter Adventure Hour covered Starman number 81. The Dr. DC podcast covered Booster Gold 26 and 27. The Birds of Prey podcast covered the Blackest Night JSA miniseries. The Bat Pod covered Blackest Night Batman the miniseries. The Absolute DC podcast covered Blackest Night The Flash miniseries. And It All Comes Back to Superman covered Blackest Night Superman the miniseries. As I speak those words, some of those podcasts have not yet released their episodes, but if you are looking for a comprehensive list of where to find all the links to all those episodes, go to LanternCast.com. Look up the post. It should be on from May 29th, called JLMay 2019, celebrating the 10th anniversary of Blackest Night, and you will see a complete list, complete with links, so that you can find each and every one of those episodes. Also, follow the hashtag JLMay on Twitter. And make sure to like and retweet and give this as much exposure as possible, because not only are we celebrating Blackest Night and its 10-year anniversary, so are a lot of other people, including DC Comics themselves, as within the next few days, as I say these words, I think maybe 2 or 3 weeks, they will be releasing a Blackest Night hardcover omnibus featuring every single issue involving Blackest Night. Every resurrected title, every mini, every tie-in. As far as I'm aware.
That's a pretty impressive volume.
It's a $150 volume.
Well, that's about right.
I want to make sure I didn't just talk out of my ass there. So let me pull this up over on Amazon. It is the 10th anniversary Blackest Night Omnibus. It comes out June 11th. Right. By the way, guys, it's cover priced at $150 right now on Amazon as I record this. It may go up as you hear this. It's on pre-order for $91.21. I know that's still a lot of money, but it's not $150. So if you want to save money and get this thing, I'd get it as soon as possible. So kind of just FYI, guys. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out. It doesn't say. Okay. Collects Adventure Comics, Blackest Night main series, Blackest Night Batman, Blackest Night Flash, Blackest Night JSA, Superman, Tales of the Corps, Titans, Wonder Woman. Okay, so that's the minis. Catwoman, Green Arrow, Phantom Stranger, Starman, Suicide Squad, The Atom and Hawkman, The Power of Shazam, The Question, Untold Tales, Weird Western Tales. Okay, those are the resurrected titles. It collects all the Green Lantern issues, and it collects all the Green Lantern Corps issues. Okay, so it doesn't collect the tie-ins. By that I mean Doom Patrol, Justice League, Outsiders, those series that were currently ongoing that just so happened to have a Blackest Night tie-in. The tie-ins aren't there, but the resurrected titles, the Blackest Night main series, the Green Lantern tie-ins, the Green Lantern Corps tie-ins, and the mini-series are all a part of this, which is still that's about as close to complete as you're going to get without paying to have the series bound.
That's true.
All right, Mark. I've given the rundown of where to find all the JLMay participants. Do you want to tell people how they can reach us in the future?
Yes, if we haven't scared those people off. and actually, we might be talking more about our regular listeners than anybody who just jumped on. Website is LanternCast.com. Our email is LanternCast@gmail.com. We are on Twitter and Facebook. You can use hashtag GLCast to locate us and reach out to us in either of those. iTunes and Stitcher, we are on both of those, so if you listen to us or want to listen to us on either of those platforms, please leave us a positive review after you do. And last but not least, if you'd like to leave us a voicemail in general about this event, about asking questions about anything about the show, stuff you'd like to hear on the show, or just anything at all, 708 Lantern is the voicemail. 708 Lantern, and let us know what you think.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in, everybody who did. I hope you enjoyed JLMay 2019. Somebody else will take the reins next year, but we look forward to JLMay 2020. In the meantime, thank you for listening. Have a great night.
Good night, everybody.